probably going to see the vertex. And so you'll use the vertex form. And the vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay, so what you can do to find the equation of this is you can plug in the pieces of information for your vertex. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to plug in h and k. So that gives me y equals a times x minus. So here when I look at my vertex here, what is my h value? -4. So minus a minus becomes a plus 4 squared. And what is my k value? 3. Okay, so that's the first step. Okay, the second step, after you plug in h and k, is you're going to find a corresponding set of x and y coordinates, an ordered pair, that you can see somewhere on your graph. So when you look at this graph, you want to find a point that falls right on the intersection of grid lines. And so look carefully. So when I look, I see I have this point right here. I have potentially this point right here. Those are the points that I'm going to choose from. Find one, and again, you have them on the opposite side too. Okay, so if you find a point on that graph that intersects right at the grid lines, what you can do is you can plug in that x and y coordinate. So I'm going to use this one right here, since it's the y-intercept, 0, -5. So I'm going to plug in a 0 for my x. So this becomes a 0, and I'm going to plug in a -5 for my y. And then what you're going to do for your final step here is you're going to solve for a. So I'm going to go back into my calculator now, and I'm going to type this whole equation into my calculator. So I'm going to use the solve feature. I have -5 is equal to. I'm going to go ahead and use a, but you can use x if you want to here, just as a variable, but I'm going to keep it exactly as it is. Now, if you don't, if you leave it in this form and type a, then parentheses, you're going to get an error message. It's the error of it doesn't understand the implied multiplication. So if you are going to use a here or x, whatever you happen to use, you have to explicitly multiply here. And then I get my 6 plus 4 squared, then plus 3, and I'm solving for, in this case, a. And so when I hit enter, I find my solution here. Let me go back because I typed in the wrong thing. So here when I enter my solve feature, I'm going to type in -5 is equal to a. Once again, you have to explicitly multiply, and this was a 0, not a 6. So I have 0 plus 4 squared, all plus 3, and I want to solve for a. And so when I hit solve for that, I get my answer of -1/2. And so what I can do is go back to my original problem. And I'm going to write my equation using my a value, my h value, and my k value. So I'm going to come back to my original equation, which was y equals my a value I found to be -1/2, x minus my h value, which I found to be -4, so minus a -4, and my k value, which I found to be 3. And so that gives me my equation. All right, I want you to try these same 4 steps and see if you can come up with the equation that represents this graph here, please. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to identify my vertex and the intersection point that I see up here. I can use either of these, but I'm going to use the one -4, 8, and my vertex of -6, -2. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to combine these two steps right here. So I'm going to plug in my y. My y of the point that I find is 8 equals. My a value is unknown, but it's going to be, actually I'm going to go through this as the individual steps. Okay, so I'm going to start with my h and k values. So I'll start with my equation, y equals a times x minus my h value was a negative 6, so minus 6 becomes x plus 6 squared minus 2. My second step is to plug in an x and a y coordinate, so I'm going to use negative 4 for x, and I'm going to use 8 for y. I'm going to plug those in, and then I'm going to do a solve on my calculator for that. And so when I solve for this, I get solve 8 equals, I'm going to still use a. I have to explicitly multiply. My x value is negative 4 plus 6. Close that off and square it, and then subtract 2. Tell the calculator what I want it to solve for. I want it to solve for the a value, and when I do, I get 5 halves. So I know that my a value is equal to 5 halves, and so my final equation can be written as y equals, or f of x equals 5 halves x minus my x coordinate of the vertex, so negative 6, plus my y value, or my y coordinate of the vertex, negative 2. And so this would be the equation for that line, or for that function.